Well, hi everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Maddie Reardon. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for 88.9 Radio Milwaukee. For those of you who are not familiar with 88.9, we are a nonprofit, non-commercial public radio station located here in Milwaukee. And our mission is to create a more inclusive and engaged Milwaukee through music and stories. My favorite part of my job is being able to host and support events like this in and for our community. The power of creating space for conversation and sharing stories of empowerment is huge. And I'm so grateful to be able to be a small part of making this event available to our community. We depend on you, our community, to stay online, on air, and in the community. So if you do feel so inclined, you can visit our website at radiomilwaukee.org and click the orange heart to donate and keep us a part of the community. I want to encourage you to use the chat function on this Zoom call to share resources, words of support, and to ask any questions you might have. If we do have time at the end, I will facilitate a short Q&A period with our guests and co-hosts. And I will be sharing periodically some links in the chat for various projects and topics that some of our guests will be talking about. So please keep an eye out for those and click on those to have them on your desktop after the event is over. Without further ado, I would like to turn this conversation over to Dr. Leslie Harris, Associate Professor of Communication at UW-Milwaukee.
Hi, everybody. My name is Leslie Harris. Like Maddie said, I'm an associate professor in the communication department at UWM, and I'm one of the project leads for Voices of Gun Violence, along with Portia Cobb from the UWM Film Department, Aaron Parcell from the UWM Communication Department, and Deborah Gillespie from Mothers Against Gun Violence. And we also have great partners at Carroll University and others who do amazing public health work who help us and participate on this project. So I want to begin by thanking 88.9. I want to begin by thanking 88.9 Radio Milwaukee for partnering with us on this event, as well as the Wisconsin Humanities Council for their support. This event is funded in part by a grant from the Wisconsin Humanities Council with funds from the National Endowment for the Humanities, and they'd like us to emphasize that any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in the project do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities. And the Wisconsin Humanities Council supports and creates programs that use history, culture, and discussion to strengthen community life for everyone in Wisconsin. And we hope that Voices of Gun Violence contributes to that. By creating an archive, a living archive of people's experiences with gun violence in the larger Milwaukee area, Voices of Gun Violence helps us understand the complex impacts that gun violence can have on our lives and on our communities. After this program, I hope that you'll visit our website to learn how you can share your story, to listen to some of the other stories featured on our website, and explore our new virtual memorial garden. And so before I introduce you to my colleague and moderator for this panel today, I would like to share a short preview of our virtual garden space designed by Foresight Studios here in Milwaukee. All right, Maddie, we're ready to share the preview.
Oh man, I think that there's a lot of violence that comes before the gun violence. Like I said, there's socioeconomic violence, and that's real. There's political violence, there's exclusion of certain communities, stuff like that. And to the point where it actually comes to a gun violence situation, a lot of stuff has already had to happen to get at that place, in my opinion.
You can visit our website to see more and explore that virtual garden space. Now, I would like to introduce you to our moderator for today. Deborah Gillespie is the founder of Mothers Against Gun Violence, and she's an invaluable partner on the Voices of Gun Violence project. She's a wonderful human, and I can't think of anyone better to lead us in our discussion today. So, Deborah.
Thank you, Leslie. I want everyone to know who's listening today that Dr. Leslie Harris, if it wasn't for her, this project would not even exist. She has been tirelessly working behind the scenes to put the Gun Violence Project together. And she developed our faculty members, UWM and Carroll College faculty. So I just want everyone to know that I am very appreciative of her. I also want to thank Sarah Fierick, because if it wasn't for Sarah, the 88.9 event today would not be happening. So thank you, Sarah, very much. I am so excited to introduce you to these three phenomenal women, Melody Venezuela and Chantel Riley and Christina Paris. These three women have taken their grief and turned it into community healing action. And just think, to lose a loved one or to be assaulted via gun violence and still take your pain, your loss, or your experience and turn it into something that are changing lives in our community, it sounds like it's unthinkable. But these three women have, and I am so excited for you to meet them. The questions I'm going to ask them, I hope, will help you not only understand their experiences, but how they were able to take these experiences and their grief and turn it into community action and healing. My question is, how were you affected by gun violence? And the reason why I say affected as opposed to affected is that their definitions are similar, but there's a difference. When you're affected by something, it's like someone is trying to repair. But when you're affected by something, someone broke something. They disrupted something. And in this case, I feel that gun violence was an effect in their lives. It was a disruptor. Melody, Chantel, or Christina, either one of you can dive in on that answer of that question. And I'll repeat it. How was your life affected by gun violence?
Well, I could start. Hi all, and thank you for coming. My name is Melody Villanueva, and how I was affected was that my only son was taken from me, execution style, on August 18, 2018, by his biological father. He took away from me what my immediate family, because I'm a mother of two. My oldest daughter is Alicia, and she's 27 now. And we were like the Three Musketeers. So that's how I was affected. I'm down to one.
Christina.
Well, I was robbed and raped at gunpoint quite some time ago. It was actually 30 years ago, but it still is a part of my experience. But I guess I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones because I was allowed to live through it. And it impacts my life ever after. You know, I'm more fearful of things, I'm more jumpy. But I've also used it to do things that I'm proud of. And I'm also very proud to have met so many courageous people as a result of what happened to me. Yeah.
And so my name is Chantel Riley, and I was affected by gun violence in March 17th, so St. Patrick's Day. I was notified by the detectives, the police department, that my oldest son, my firstborn, Javonte Riley Sr., was murdered. He was in Melody. I love the fact that you use the term taken away, because my son was taken away. So I didn't lose him, he was taken away. And for me, that created a ripple effect. There was a tear down of my existence, of how I understood and connected with the relationship of myself. It tore down the existence and understanding of the relationship that I have. I have 2 surviving sons, and it changed the dynamic of the relationship that I had with them. It also, my son left behind a son, and my grandson at the time was 17 months. So knowing that he was going to have growing up without a father, which is something that we're kind of challenged by within our community, as far as when we feel that our children, African-American children, are not being raised by fathers in their household. When my grandson had a father who was actively engaged and involved with him, that relationship was abruptly interrupted, and now we are trying to raise him without the presence of the person who was most involved with his care. And just the ripple effect that it had on my family. So it's not just me being affected by my son being murdered through gun violence. The person who actually murdered my son actually was a convicted felon who actually had previous gun convictions. So the system, it also showed me that a system that we have created is not a strong enough system to be able to prevent something like that, because that's what I told the judge during the day of sentencing, that your laws basically allowed this man to murder my son. You gave him opportunity after another opportunity. So it's something that there's a ripple effect that happened from just that, my son being murdered that day, that it affected not just myself. His brothers are affected. Like I said, his son is affected. You know, anyone who cared and had contact with him at some point in his life was affected by that. So it's something that we don't really, my son became a news story. He became a number. He no longer was a human being. So I'm still affected by the fact that we typically aren't really looking at the dynamics of what happens when we lose one person, and how that it ripple effects through just not the individuals directly affected, but as a community as a whole.
Melody, you mentioned the taking away, and Christina, you talked about the fear. But Chantel, you mentioned the ripple effect and the teardown of your existence. Then how were you ladies able to cope with your experience?
Well, to be completely honest, while doing this, I've realized that I have masked my grief by jumping into activism, 150%. But one main thing that I have to say, on the night that I was told that Randall shot Jakari dead, those were the exact words on how I was told. That night I stepped outside, still in a state of shock, and smoking a cigarette, and looking into the sky, and I saw an image of my father, who had just lost 3 months prior to pancreatic stage 4 cancer. I saw an image of my dad in the sky, and then I saw my son's image walking towards him, and them going in arm, and then disappearing into the sky. So that left me not with a sense of peace, but a sense of calm. And from there, that's when I started being able to not be blessed to be able to sleep at night, but the sense of calm, knowing that my son is in a safer place, and he is with not only his grandfather and loved ones, but he is with his true father, God Almighty.
Wow.
Christina?
Well, I can say for coping, and by the way, hearing both Chantel and Melody speak, there's so many things that come up that seem very common, there's connections. You know, like Chantel, you speak of your, you know, that this man was out doing this again and again. The system failed. My assailant, when I went to court, unfortunately my DNA had disintegrated when I went to the hospital, and waited 8 hours to be examined after that because the nurse was so overrun with other rape victims ahead of me. I had to wait for 8 hours to be seen. My son was with me, my 14-year-old son, who was my rock and stayed with me. And sad to say, he also was assaulted later on because of his vulnerability of being mentally ill. So that was like a double hit years later. But needless to say, he was there with me and stayed with me. But I later found out that my assailant that I identified by voice and by body build, even though the DNA didn't say it, he was out for over and over doing this. He was on parole, and the next spree that included mine involved 8 other women that we know of. Wow. But those 8 other women's DNA stood up. But as far as the immediate coping, I was so relieved because, you know, having a gun held to your head the whole time, and then, you know, covering your face, so I intentionally covered my face so he had no reason to kill me, because that's what I was so afraid of. He held that gun to my head as he walked me through the alley and then found a very dark place outside between 2 garages, and that's when he robbed me and raped me. And then when he was done, he said, "You stay there for 5 minutes or I'm going to blow your head off." And, you know, I didn't know what 5 minutes was. I was so scared that he'd come back, change his mind, and kill me. So I grabbed my clothes, did not put them on, and I ran back home naked and pounded on the door. And that's where my 14-year-old son was, to greet me at the door. And he accompanied me to the hospital. And that's when I realized our services were woefully inadequate. At that point, we were fighting a war, you know, spending billions of dollars to kill people. And we didn't even have enough to have another nurse on call to help people who needed help. And I've always been an activist, and I've used that as a way to fight back this. And in the hospital, I was told, get yourself some counseling. There's this really good organization. It's called Beacon, Survivors of Sexual Assault, and it will really be helpful to you. I called 3 days worth, and the line was busy, and because it was shared with a whole bunch of other nonprofit groups. And so I was determined not to let that happen again. And I play Irish music, and actually that night I had come back from band practice, getting ready for Irish Fest. So I connected my love of music, and I had a huge fundraiser at Centennial Hall with some Irish musicians I knew. We raised over $1,000 to have Beacon's own phone line for forever, you know. So I was really grateful to do that, but I also, you know, continually work on trying to prevent gun violence. It's way too easy to get guns, and yeah, so that's just part of it. I do also coping. For me, I was allowed to live, and I feel strong enough to speak out. Not everybody is, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I speak to, you know, youth correctional organizations and other nonprofits. Shortly after my assault, I connected with a woman at the Shorewood Police Department because my assault took place in Shorewood, supposedly a safe neighborhood. But as you know, violence has no boundaries, no borders. Anyone can be vulnerable to that. But I gave an educational workshop, or it was a panel, with the social worker I met at the hospital, who, to me, Janine Arsenault is one of the most incredible women in our community, and she helped me a lot as a social worker. And the woman officer at Shorewood too, we spoke and we spread the word about this because, you know, you need to know about it. Education is power. And there were so many people that came to the library, they had to turn people away. And so we put on another one, and yet again. So, and I met people at that presentation who said, because of coming public with it, they also then started to go to get counseling because they had buried it. They were worried that it was their fault. They were out late at night, or they wore clothing that was provocative or whatever, and they thought it was their fault, and it's not. So out of this grief and horror, I feel like I have made a difference, and I will continue till I die to do whatever I can. So there.
Chantel.
So initially, how did I cope? Initially, I didn't cope. I don't know if people really realize that what we experience, what we've each experienced is what first, yes, we endured some type of, event that had happened into our lives, but what we experienced first was trauma. So when we experience trauma, the one thing that we try to do is either we don't fully address things, we try to protect ourselves and suppress things. So I didn't really actually have an opportunity to really, me personally, because a week before, I was having a conversation with my son. We were driving down the street and I was like, you need to get life insurance because, like one day, when you get older, it was really truly a concept of thinking like it was like a poor man's like inheritance for my grandson one day. So it was like, you need to get life insurance because, like when he gets older and then, when something happens to you, then you could actually, leave something behind for him. He's like, yeah, like I should. So yeah, but we didn't get a chance to follow through with that. So like I said, a week later, he was gone. So we were trying to come to terms with what had happened with the situation, but now I am trying to determine how we're going to financially bury him. So we didn't have that ability of having life insurance and then just going with this flow. So basically, the thing that part of my process would have been grief. That was a process that was paused. So I wasn't able to experience grief right away connected to experiencing what happened with my son. So I realized I was in autopilot. So I didn't, day-to-day actions weren't just day-to-day actions. It was like I showed up to work that next day, not because I was supposed to be scheduled to work, but it was just, these were things that I just did out of habit. So it didn't make sense for me to be there. And I stood there and they asked me why was I there? And I didn't really have an answer. I showed up because it was something that I felt like I needed, that I did. I just did it. So as far as the initial coping, there was not initial coping. I was in survival mode, just in a constant state of survival mode, constantly. All the time. I was hyper vigilant, especially when it came down to my sons, like our family. It affected how we communicated with each other. So we didn't have a gap of opportunity to, like if I sent you a message or I called you and you didn't answer, that sent panic. So we were all really anxious. So we didn't have the luxury anymore of just saying, okay, you could have been in the bathroom. It didn't matter if you were in the bathroom now, because now that lack of communication means something's wrong and something's happening. So you would just be in panic mode about that. So for me, that initial thing called coping really wasn't a thing. And then actually having the experience of what coping was supposed to be based upon that type of situation. Unfortunately, we are experiencing more of people dying and people being murdered and these traumatic type of experiences than we actually should be experiencing in this world. That we want safety and security, but we don't have safety and security when we're constantly being flooded with information through the media, whatever. It's a constant reminder. So I get constantly traumatized. I stopped watching TV because of the fact that every time I turned on the news, I get to hear about someone else dying, especially related to a gun. So guess what? That constantly is bringing me back to my space of what I experienced, So how do I actually go through a process when it keeps bringing me back to square one every time? And then I understand there's a mother attached. When you just say a person, you know, died, you just report them as a person. Like I said, we dehumanize them and we just make them these numbers and stories. We don't create human beings connected to it. But then when I hear it, I'm like, that was somebody's child, you know, or that's somebody's mother, or that's someone's sibling, that's someone's parent. So like we don't have that humanization of what's happening with people. So what happened with me after some time in therapy, because I was very grateful to have access to therapy because I was already utilizing therapy for other things that I've experienced in my life prior to that, that for me to actually start working through that process. And then through this, I met Janice Gordon through Victims of Milwaukee Violence when I was trying to look for support. And that was probably one of the most life-changing moments for me, because through the process of meeting her and she supported me in making that connection, she had created a grief support group. And through that grief support group, this created a space for me to realize that I wasn't just the only person that experienced this type of trauma, and how we're supposed to navigate through life after we've experienced that, because I can't forget that it ever happened. You know, like every day, my son was like the person, if I went out, because I was a single parent, he was the person that made sure I got home safely at night. You know, he was the person that I depended on to do a lot of the things like in our house, you know, kill that bug, go get that light, things like that. So that when that was gone, like I said, I lost a part of myself. Just, I didn't even go out for a while because of the fact that I didn't have that person that was going to be making sure that I made it home safely. So it changed and it altered my life in such a way. So through coming to that support group allowed me space to feel that, one, how I'm feeling, I'm not alone with how I felt. This is part of my process. And that there were other people that had this type of experiences is the same as mine, that made me feel a little more human about it and connected with it. So I was grateful for that. So, and then it kind of went from inside of me to outside of me. So then I started doing community education on like the value of having life insurance and talking about advance directives, because we don't have these conversations. I facilitate a death cafe every month. So people, because I realized, guess what? People are dying. We're all experiencing death. We all are connected to death. No one's exempt from it. But yet we don't have conversations about it. And we don't feel like we have space to openly talk about it. So I started hosting a death cafe here once a month. And just the people who come into the space. And it's not this somber, you know, feeling that people think like, oh, it's something that no one wants to talk about. People want to talk about it. They just don't feel comfortable where and who and how. So to be able to hold a space for people is one of the ways that I do help with coping for myself, because being able to give something to others is it's extension. It's extension. You know, I get to love on my grandson. It's an extension, you know, of spreading that love from my son to his son and helping him and supporting him with nurturing him. So that, but if I didn't have him, I don't know how I would, you know, things would probably still look different from that perspective. But that's how, so far, how I do it.
You made a really good point, Chantel. Actually, all three of you did. You talked about not initially coping. And it was said that by being active, what would you three say to someone who is a new survivor, who just lost someone or themselves became a victim of gun violence?
Hi. Well, I would say that I know the pain, and I know there'll be days where you feel that you don't want to be here anymore. But just know that your loved one is watching over you, is walking beside you. Whether they send you a message through an animal that they liked, a bird, butterfly, or even a dream, just to remind you that they're there and that you'll be okay. Because to think about suicide and then attempting, in my opinion, you will never see your loved one again. That's a guarantee. But just know that they are there, and with faith and love and support, you will meet them again.
And for me, the advice I'd give to a survivor, in my case was the survivor, lucky to be left alive. Number one, remember it's not your fault. Never. You didn't ask for this to happen. And the other thing I would say is make sure that you ask for help, that you seek help, you ask for your friends and family to help you, your coworkers, both physically. In my case, I did need some physical medical help, and then mental and emotional too, that support. The counseling Chantel spoke of too, that was critical for me. To know there's other people who've survived an assault. Not all of them were by gun, some were by knife, some by just force. You know, the gun in my case changed everything. I couldn't talk them out of it. I couldn't run away or scream. So the gun changed the dynamic of my assault, no doubt about it. And I found out later he stole that gun and used it on the next, I think it was 3 women in the court when I was, you know, trying to figure out what happened. That was determined. And also, it's normal to have flashbacks and fear, depression, all of that's normal. You know, some people think they have to just bounce back, like, oh, go back to work, you'll get over it. No, that doesn't happen. There might be times where you need to take a mental health day, you know, that's normal. So that's the advice that I would give, and also that you'll never be the same. You know, time heals, but you will never be the same person. And I'm assuming that Chantel and Melody have that too. You live with that every single day, and Deborah too. You know, but you will also meet people like you that will inspire you and will walk with you. I mean, just being here today is giving me, boy, a lot of pretty great, amazing energy. And all those in the audience listening, and you know, your support, and you probably have had experiences like this as well. But we're not alone. So that's my advice.
Christina, share with everyone what you are doing in the community or to change.
Well, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier too that I, you know, initially made sure I tried to get the help I needed, the counseling. And when I met with the barrier of a 3-day wait, it really made me angry, you know. So that's what motivated me to not only fundraise for the telephone line, but also to educate people. I guess I was fortunate to be raised in a household where people give back, and that you think of not just yourself, but you think of the community. My parents are both that way. And so I think pretty much most of my life I have always lived that path. And so when I was assaulted, I was actually, the money that the person robbed from me was actually a bank deposit, because I was a volunteer at Peace Action at the time, and every year they put on an event. It's a very beautiful, moving event called Lanterns for Peace. And it's based in Japan as an honor to those who died in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but they extend it to all wars and all victims of violence. So here I was making that deposit, and I thought, I'm had band practice, it was late, I'm going to put it in tomorrow's bank. Well, how ironic that a person stole the money from such a peaceful, beautiful event during an act of violence. But that I was at Peace Action at the time, working there or volunteering. And then out of Peace Action's committee to try to work on gun violence in our community sprang WAVE, Wisconsin Anti-Violence Effort. And so I volunteered for WAVE many years. And then in 2007, I started working there as my regular day job. And that's where I met Deborah, very luckily. And we work to prevent gun violence with policy and education. And we collaborate with a lot of different organizations, the Brady Campaign, March for Our Lives with the youth movement after Parkland shooting, you know, so many groups, Mothers Against Gun Violence, which is Deborah's group, because after she lost her son, she started that group. So that's what I do. I mean, this is my day job, and it's my volunteer job, and it's my human job to make this world a better place and to try to influence the legislature to make some common sense gun laws, and just be with you and support. So that's what I'm doing, Deborah, and everybody.
It sounds like I'm tired just listening to it. I'm like, whoa, that's a lot. Melody, I know that you're active in the community. You said that's how you were able to cope. What are you doing that's making changes in our community? I know the answer, but I want our audience to know.
Well, from Milwaukee to Virginia to West Virginia, and now coming up to Georgia, I have jumped in 150% in activist mode and in trying to inform and educate citizens in our states and different states on the importance of civic duty and the role that we each play to protect the pillars of our democracy. And at this point, how I've been saying it as, you know, this is our time to protect our democracy against tyranny, for which I truly believe, as a New Yorker originally, Don DeCon represents. So, but more importantly is just reminding people that not only voting is important, but expressing your concerns, calling your senators, going to town halls, vetting them, and reminding them that they work for us, and they answer to us. So, and we just got to keep in mind that it takes all of us. I'm on that it takes a village concept. So, but that's where I'm at now. I've joined multiple organizations, as Guns Down Milltown, with a gentleman that I consider my brother, Gideon Verdeen, and that's a project that is trying to eliminate gun violence between the youth in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm part of the organization called NAN, National Action Network, an Al Sharpton network, and out of the Virginia chapter, and I am the Spanish interpreter. And I've been in on a couple of cases where, you know, some men, they were treated unfairly, and, you know, and they're misunderstood. And, you know, sometimes after going through the process of going to court in regards to my son, I've realized how broken our judicial system is. It has shown me that they cater and appease the criminal, you know, before the victim, and it's just truly disgusting. For instance, in my case, the Randall Wright, who is the murderer, he was given property for bail. And that was the first time on that particular charge in Wisconsin. And so I am trying my best to reach out to legislators and in changing that, you know, because it didn't feel right for me as a mother who lost my son the way I did, to feel as if I was the perpetrator, not only by his family, but by the court system itself. So, but yeah, right now I'm really on hell-bent on working on trying to, you know, get the vote out for in the this Georgia election. So that's more important. We get those 2 seats, then we'll finally start working on an agenda for the people.
Chantel.
So if you don't mind, I wanted to go back to the last question that you asked before you asked this current one,
Sure.
about what to tell other people who have actually experienced, new people who've experienced gun violence.
Okay.
And yes, the common sentiment is, yes, you are not alone. 1, 2, be able to openly express your feelings. Christina talked about the anger that you feel. Be okay with being able to express that. Sometimes that we don't necessarily get the opportunity to openly express how we feel because of sometimes that connection with gun violence. It's more socially acceptable if the person is a victim versus if a person happens to be a perpetrator or happens to be in a space of something that has happened that it has not been right, that it totally, it disenfranchises us from the ability to grieve. We have a disconnect with that, and we should not be able to silence or mute people being able to express their grief when it comes down to their loss. Their loss is their loss. Like I said, if you want to criminalize a situation, you can. It's going to happen in some scenarios, but the person who sustained and endured that loss, they have a right to grieve. So I don't feel like that we should have spaces where it's only socially acceptable for a person to grieve versus people who, because it's not socially acceptable according to society to be able to grieve, that they're not allowed to have that experience. So people should be allowed to have that experience. And individuals, if that was a scenario that your loved one, because of some type of activity that was not considered to be socially acceptable, do not allow yourself to be limited to not experiencing your grief because that person still mattered to you. So we don't want to limit that. We should not limit that. So also, yes, support groups are amazing. If you can find a support group, I am grateful for my support group because of the fact that there was a group that totally understood and connected with my type of loss, because we can honestly erect a support group for any type of loss in this world. We don't have to, it's not just limited, and it does not have to be generalized, because our individual experiences and how we have encountered grief, it navigates how we actually move through grief. So, and I'm sorry I speak like that because of the fact that I'm currently studying to become a certified grief counselor. Through the process of me trying to move through my grief, I had to learn about grief, because one thing that we didn't really talk about, especially within like communities of color, or when it's the fact that it's something that's disenfranchised, we don't openly talk about grief and what the grief process looks like and how do people get support through grief. So we limit ourselves and we are disconnected from that experience. We just, as Christina said, we have become this culture where it's kind of like, get over it, move on, like, okay, it happened at that time, and then just move, you move forward, you go to your new normal. It's like, it's not a new normal. Nothing's normal about someone being traumatized. Nothing's ever normal about that. So to create and use the terms called new normals, no, I had to learn how to integrate my situation that happened and that encounter and the loss of my son to living every day. Right. So those are not, you cannot look at that and say, oh, well, let's just try to create something new. No, there's nothing new, because this is going to carry me through the rest of my life. So how do I try to merge those two things together, my current life and what happened that stopped and changed my life? So we want to be able to allow people to have space to be able to openly talk about those types of things. The fact that people are going to want to support you, but people are very uncomfortable when it comes down to supporting you, when it comes down to death, loss, things like that. So people aren't necessarily, steering clear from you or trying to stay away from you. sometimes the people that love you and care for you the most are the ones who are also hurt by what happened to you, and they don't know how to share and verbalize that. So allow them that space. Be gentle with yourself. I was able to find healthy ways to cope. I didn't really talk about that. Is the fact that like meditation and yoga they were my lifeline. Because I had I was moving through autopilot in life, and the fact that like there was nothing that was going to stop the thoughts that I had and the feelings that I had. But I ended up, before we started going through trial, I started using meditation as a way to not silence the mind, but being able to allow a space for me to comfortably have a moment, to be present in what I was doing, and which for me, it expanded into yoga. So I have a yoga practice that I also helps me be present, because that's the biggest thing. Like for us to be able to live today, we have to be present in today. So I utilize those two tools, are tools for me to be able to help me be present in today. So that actually created a catalyst for me that I became a yoga instructor. So now I actually host a yoga for grief class. And it's one of those lovely user-friendly classes that you can come because grief is not just about death. We experience loss in a lot of different levels and a lot of different forms, but to be able to find other ways and healthy tools to be able to process that grief, we need outlets. We need that, and we need it to be present and accessible to people. So I do that as well.
I have a question. For the yoga for grief class, is that just where you're actually just only doing yoga? Or if someone has a need to share during the class, are they able to?
We talk about why you come to the space, and allow people to be open about, what's bringing them there, because something brings us to wherever we go and whatever we do, something is the catalyst behind it. So we talk about that. We also have opportunity to be able to talk after how they're feeling about things afterwards, because of the fact that, it's not just focused on the movement, but, we have thoughts and we have experience and we're connecting with things that are happening during that time. So to be able to hold space for people to come and be able to talk about those things as well is actually it's the intention to be able to do that. And then from there, I'm also what they call an end of life doula or a death doula. So I actually support individuals either through preparation, through transition, or also after and during a loss. So for me, I've been doing a lot of education within groups about grief and disenfranchised grief, all kinds of things that we do about experiencing and navigating what we call grief, and how we all experience it in different ways and different forms. There's things that we do, how we move through it. And it's not something that it's going to look different for me. It looked different, I'm guaranteed, for Melody. It looked different for Christina. But yet what we did commonly have was grief. So to be able to, allow people to identify what that is, understand what that may look like, and how they need to navigate through it. I do education within the community about that. It depends on what the loss is. But the fact is that we all experience it. We are all going to encounter it, and we all need a space to be able to talk about it. And how do we move through it in a healthy way? Because we can use, unhealthy things like drugs, alcohol, things like that, other things to help us cope. But we need to find other tools. We need to be having access to healthy tools to help us cope.
And then Chantel, is Blue Lotus the yoga, or is that a third?
Yes. So Blue Lotus Life is that is my business, where the intention of Blue Lotus Life is to restore balance and harmony between the mind, body, and spirit. So more of a holistic approach to how we navigate and we do things through life. So I am an herbalist, so I also use herbs through like teas, herbal salt soaks, anything that, like I said, the intention is to be able to give people resources that are in a healthy manner to be able to help restore a balance. Because what happens when we experience trauma, we have an imbalance. So those imbalances move through our cells, it moves through the way that we think, it moves through our actions and our behaviors, the same way grief does. So to be able to use tools to be able to restore balance when we have an imbalance is one of the premises of Blue Lotus Life. So yes, I'm a Reiki practitioner, so another form and a method and a tool to be able to restore balance when we experience imbalances, and not just through death, not just through trauma, but I mean, there's college students on here. There's things called finals and presentations and things that throw us way out of sorts and causing an imbalance within our lives. So being able to create, we're parents, we're living through a pandemic right now. So we have a lot of imbalances right now. We are all experiencing a lot of different forms of trauma, and we are all actually collectively going through forms of grief right now. So that is part of what I do. So yes, I do yoga classes and meditations and things like that to be able to help restore that balance and harmony when we feel that imbalance because of life.
We've got like 2 minutes and, well, actually 1 to 2 minutes. So I like each of you to say something briefly you'd like to leave our audience with. It could be a statement, a word. What would you like to share?
Compassion.
Oh, sorry.
No, compassion. Compassion. We have to move in a space of having compassion towards ourselves, self-compassion, and compassion for each other, because we never know. I mean, if you see me today, you wouldn't know my story until I told it to you. So you never know what is happening on a person on the inside. So, you know, just learn to exercise compassion for individuals and human beings as a whole.
Christina.
I guess for me, my biggest word is gratitude that I'm here, alive, but also with that is use the information that, you know, more than 40,000 people dying every year in our country at the hand of a gun should cause some action and pushback and changing laws. So use your voices, and when organizations call upon you to call your legislator or write letters or postcards, or when it's safe to go marching again, be there. Stand up for those who couldn't, who've passed on. It's our responsibility to be here for everybody who cannot speak and to make life better. Yeah.
I just would like to say and remind people that no matter where you come from or where your background, what your personal situation is, we are all connected and we are all in this together.
I want to thank all of you for sharing your stories today. Part of this project is the sharing of stories, and I wanted to end with a video that some of our UWM students helped to create with some photos and some snippets of the stories that you've heard today. So please hang on for another 5 or 6 minutes to see that video, and then you're welcome to hop off. But I just wanted to say how grateful I am to be able to have been a very small part of this event today. But I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you for being here and for sharing your story. I am going to, again, haphazardly share my screen, but I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I will go ahead and share this video with you.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you. Yes.
Chantel Riley. I actually lost my oldest son. He was 23. It was actually March of 2016. He was murdered by a person who had a handgun.
My name is Christina Paris. It's been a long time ago. It was actually August 5th, 1990. And I play Irish flute in a band, and our band was practicing that evening for Irish Fest. And I came home, I drove into my garage, and then I went to the trunk of my car to get my flute and sheet music out. And when I had lifted the trunk up, at that point there was somebody behind me, and he held a gun to my head, and he was choking me with one arm or one hand, and then holding the gun to my head in the other. And he pretty much kept saying over and over, "Don't you make a sound or I'm gonna blow your head off."
Hi, my name is Maddie Villanueva. It was August 18th, 2018. Typical day for me. I was actually in Virginia, and I got a call from my son's grandmother, my son Jakari Darius Wright. His grandmother calls me and states, Randall shot Jakari dead. This was here in Milwaukee.
I participated in a support group, a grief support group for parents as a whole who have lost their children through violence. For me, that was the first time that I actually felt like, with my circumstance, that I was not alone. I'm not the only one. Because you feel like you are the only one going through that situation when you are going through it. What I've learned about grief is that depending on the loss, how you process that and the grief kind of flows a little differently. But there's something about finding someone who has a similar experience to you that creates a vulnerability and a connection that allows you to, it helps with the grief process, actually, you know, and having someone that's there that actually gets it.
Forgiveness is yet to come, but I can say one thing though. I have yet to be angry. Anger has not touched my heart nor my soul.
At that time, I was living in Shorewood. Shorewood is considered a pretty safe neighborhood, and I always say to people, you know, guns and rape do not have any borders, you know. Time heals, but it doesn't erase, because I will never be the same person that I was. There's also a little part of me that feels guilty that I lived through it when I hear of the loss of others.
To be able to create space for people, like I love, it's just the fact that we get to create space for people to come together and be able to talk about something that we know everyone's not comfortable talking about. And cake is actually part of one of the requirements, that you have to have either cake or cookies or some type of dessert treat for the attendees of Death Cafe.
You know, there's such common sense things people can do. Background checks and the risk factor of if someone's suicidal, if you know, taking away the guns temporarily so that you can save a life. It's not taking away your gun rights. It's common sense. We live in community.
The one thing that we need to emphasize and change is removing military-style weapons in our society. I would say, lawmakers, it's time for you to understand exactly what your oath is and who you accountable to, because at the end of the day, we the people are the ones you answer to. And we the people, over, I believe is 80 to 90% now, want common sense gun laws. So it's time for you guys to stop putting NRA's money in your pockets to keep you relevant and get back to your constitutional duties. When I lost my son, yes, it's tragic. It's heartbreaking. It leaves you with a sense of emptiness. It leaves a part of you feeling like you are literally dead. But I cannot and I will not let this tragedy define me. I will not let it break me or bring me down. I know for a fact my son would not want me to be broken.
I'm going to clap for you three ladies.
Thank you.
Paula, that was wonderful. Paula Lobo did the montage, and she's here. So thank you, Paula.
Yes, thank you, Paula, so much for that. That was lovely. Thank you, Melody, Chantel, Christina, for being here, for being open and being vulnerable and sharing your story. Please look at the links that I shared in the chat. That will give you direct links to some of the organizations that Christina and Chantel and Melody were talking about. Deborah, thank you so much for your leadership. We appreciate you. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. I hope you all take a little bit of action away from this, things that you can do in your everyday life to make sure that gun violence does not happen.
Thank you again.
Appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your day. And Camille, I will make sure that you get connected to Chantel as per the chat. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.